The rumbling grew louder as Michael stepped out onto the rickety fire escape. Gray storm clouds had gathered low in the sky, obscuring the sun. He pulled his tattered coat tighter against the chill wind. This had become his ritual over the past few months. Each evening at sunset, he would climb out from his dingy one-room apartment and watch the last rays disappear behind the crumbling skyline. The sunsets provided one of the few remaining beauties in this dismal world, if you could even call it a world anymore. Most days, the thick cloud of pollution and ash made it impossible to see the sun at all. But every so often the wind would shift, parting the murky veil to reveal brilliant streaks of orange and red. Those transcendent moments, however fleeting, kept a small flicker of hope alive in Michael's heart. A heavy raindrop struck his brow, and he tipped his head back, savoring the rare kiss of moisture. The acidic rain had long rendered the city's water supply undrinkable, but this high up the droplets still carried a purity lost at ground level. As more drops began to fall, Michael stuck out his tongue, catching the precious liquid. He imagined this must be what it felt like to quench your thirst from a fresh mountain spring. So pure, so clean. Of course, moments like this never lasted. Soon the rain turned caustic, burning his lips and throat. Michael coughed and retreated back through the window into his cramped apartment. He slumped into the single ragged armchair and wiped his brow with his sleeve. These reprieves from the toxic world grew shorter with each passing day. He wondered how much longer any of them could possibly survive. Outside, the dark clouds released a deafening boom of thunder, shaking the entire building. Michael wasn't surprised. The nightly storms had grown increasingly violent over the past few weeks. He reached under the chair and pulled out a dusty leather-bound book. One of the only possessions from before the acceleration, as it had come to be called. Michael ran his fingers over the embossed golden title, Tales of the Green Valleys, a collection of bucolic short stories from some long-forgotten author. He had read and reread the book hundreds of times, trying to hold on to those simple, peaceful worlds described within its pages. Worlds that now seemed like little more than children's fantasies. Michael had just begun reading the opening lines of the first story when a tremendous crash shook the floor beneath him. He dropped the book and sprang to his feet, instinctively reaching for the aluminum baseball bat he kept propped in the corner. More crashes and splintering sounds echoed from somewhere below. His heart pounding, Michael threw open the door to the apartment and peered into the darkened hallway. The other tenants had already emerged from their units, muttering in nervous confusion. What's happening? Did the storm knock something over? Sounds like it's coming from downstairs. One of the braver residents, a hulking man named Tyrone that Michael had avoided at all costs, made his way towards the stairwell with a rusty pipe gripped in his meaty fists. Tyrone had only made it halfway down the first flight before stopping dead in his tracks, the pipe clattering to the ground. Michael couldn't see what had caused Tyrone's alarm, but the burly man turned and rushed back up the stairs, terror etched across his face. "Run! It's the Rovers!" he screamed as he barreled past the crowd. A chorus of panicked screams erupted as the other tenants scrambled back towards their apartments. Michael remained frozen, clutching the baseball bat, unable to process what was happening. That's when he saw it. A shadowy figure emerged from the stairwell, cast in silhouette by the flickering emergency lights. It moved with a disquieting deliberation, each step slow and measured. As it neared, Michael could make out the distinctive shape of the tattered uniform that had become the most feared sight across the entire city. Thick armor plating and crude metal embellishments covered its body from head to toe. A hideous face mask resembling some demonic skull obscured its features entirely. It was one of the Rovers, the roving bands of cannibalistic soldiers that had taken control of the city through sheer violence and brutality. More figures emerged from the stairwell behind the first one, their heavy boots thudding metallically against the hall's broken tiles. 5 of them, maybe more still coming. Michael thought of trying to run, to rush back into his apartment and lock himself inside. But even as that instinct took over, he knew there was no point. The Rovers wouldn't stop at his flimsy door. They would batter it down or burn the entire building to ashes if that's what it took. Trying to hide would only delay the inevitable and possibly enrage them further. No, there was only one thing he could do. He gripped the baseball bat tighter and stepped forward into the hallway, holding it firmly at his side. The lead rover stopped a few yards away, its bone-white mask staring menacingly at Michael through the shadowy eye sockets. In that moment, Michael felt all of his fear and despair transform into a boiling rage. These devils had ruined everything, destroyed an entire world through their unending cruelty and violence. He thought of the life he had lost, the future that had been stolen, the violence and suffering that had consumed every person he cared about. All gone because of them. Michael roared in anguish, spittle flying from his cracked lips. He gripped the bat with both hands and charged the lead rover, swinging the bat as hard as he could towards its twisted skull. An armored hand shot up from beneath the tattered cloak with astonishing speed, catching the bat in mid-swing. Michael felt bones crack in his hands as the bat was wrenched from his grip and he was flung back against the wall. Dazed, he shook his head and focused on the rover leader once again. He stood motionless, still gripping the bat. Mocking him, Michael glared back defiantly, spitting a stream of blood onto the floor between them. He refused to die begging for mercy. Instead, he steadied himself and uttered the only two words he could think of in that moment. The rover reacted by tossing the bat aside and slowly pulling a jagged blade of rusted metal from beneath its cloak. It flicked the blade dismissively, streaking a thin line of crimson across its mask. As his vision began tunneling, Michael felt an unexpected calm wash over him. Was this what they called the acceptance stage? He couldn't say he felt ready for death exactly. He simply knew there was nothing left he could do to stop it anymore. That's when the first shot rang out. A deafening blast that shook the walls and made Michael's already ringing ears burn with pain. The rover leader had just enough time to turn towards the source of the noise before a second shot impacted its chest plate, knocking it back a step. Sizzling tendrils of smoke unfurled from the superheated entry wound, billowing towards the ceiling. From behind the haphazard cover of an overturned couch, a new figure stood wielding an impressively large caliber handgun. Didn't your mothers ever teach you animals how to knock first before entering someone's home? The gruff voice shouted. The remaining rovers responded immediately, drawing an assortment of cobbled-together weapons and scattering for cover of their own. Michael kicked himself backwards, pulling his legs to his chest and wrapping his arms around his head as a firestorm of clattering gunfire erupted around him. Bits of drywall and plaster exploded from the walls where shots impacted, filling the air with acrid smoke and dust. He risked a glance up to see a rover taking aim at his rescuer's position with some kind of crude shotgun. Without thinking, Michael snatched up his abandoned baseball bat and hurled it as hard as he could towards the towering figure. The bat connected with a meaty thud against the rover's shoulder. Not enough to injure seriously, but just enough to disrupt its aim. It spun and fired wild as Michael's rescuer returned a barrage of controlled shots towards the new threat. One of the slugs punched clear through the rover's armor, dead center of its grotesque mask. It shuddered and collapsed in an unceremonious heap amid a splatter of gore and shattered bone fragments. In the span of a few crazed seconds, two more rovers fell to the mystery gunman's relentless barrage. Their lifeless bodies crumpled on top of the first, rivulets of crimson trailing across the broken floor. The final remaining rover seemed to realize the situation had turned untenable. Still clinging to cover, it pulled out a grenade and yanked the pin with its teeth. Michael saw the object emerge in a demented slow motion, arcing up over the upturned couch towards his rescuer's position. Everything seemed frozen in that moment, until a single monstrous blast shattered the stillness. The explosion slammed Michael back against the wall yet again, his vision whiting out as he felt the sting of shrapnel slicing across his skin. When he regained his senses, Michael blinked blearily into the smoke-filled hallway. The couch had been reduced to charred chunks of wood and fabric scattered everywhere. The emergency lights flickered furiously overhead, making everything appear to be moving in a dizzying strobe effect. He couldn't see any sign of the mystery rescuer, but to his surprise, the final rover remained where it had taken cover, slumped back against the far wall. its hulking form racked by the distinctive gurgles and wheezes of someone struggling for their final breaths. As Michael continued watching, the rover finally pulled off its grotesque mask, revealing a deceptively young woman's face beneath, staring blankly at nothing. A line of crimson trickled down from the corner of her mouth as she choked out her dying gasps. He felt no pity as her body shuddered one last time and went still, only a lingering sadness for how such cruelty and violence had become the new normal. That's when his rescuer suddenly emerged from the wreckage, stumbling and coughing. A tall figure wearing some kind of full-body armor, complete with helmet and milky white visor that glowed faintly red in the sporadic emergency lighting. They retrieved their fallen weapon, an ornately decorated Desert Eagle handgun, smoldering pieces of upholstery fabric dropping off their shoulders and back as they moved. As Michael watched with a mix of shock and awe, the armored figure turned to face him fully. You're one of the Outriders?" Michael asked in disbelief. The faceless figure appraised him for a silent moment before finally responding. "Quick study. Most people don't know what to make of us on the first encounter." The voice sounded distinctly feminine. Something about her casual indifference in all this chaos put Michael even more on edge. "What do you want? Why are you here?" She looked around at the bodies surrounding them as if just noticing the carnage. It would seem the rovers made the foolish mistake of tracking their prey to one of our safe houses. "I simply came to retrieve some gear I had stashed here and stumbled into this mess." Michael shook his head, still struggling to comprehend what he was witnessing. He had heard the rumors of the Outriders, certainly. The elite band of former soldiers and mercenaries that waged a clandestine guerrilla war against the rovers, hoping to reclaim the shattered remains of the city. But he never imagined he'd have a face-to-face encounter with one. Few ever did and lived to tell about it. You're fighting back against the rovers?" he asked shakily. She gave a single terse nod. Someone's got to start somewhere. Michael felt as if he had been holding his breath this entire time, waiting for the next explosion or deadly attack. "Is it over? Are there more of them coming?" She surveyed the hallway again before shaking her head and lowering her stance. "No, this was just a scouting party, it seems. We've had problems with this pack trying to set up a forward base in this sector. They'll think twice before trying this building again." Her nonchalant tone remained unnerving, like she was discussing something as mundane as the weather rather than the life-and-death rebellion she was engaged in. "I should get moving," she finally added, turning to leave. "Any looters or scavengers who were tracking the rovers' movements will be here before much longer." "Wait!" Michael called out before she could disappear back through the shattered doorway into the stairwell. She paused, looking back expectantly. "You can't just leave me here," he continued. "Not after all this." A cold, uneasy silence stretched out between them. Michael felt more vulnerable and exposed than he ever had before. "I could." The Outrider's voice dropped into a lower register, as if realizing the gravity of what she was considering. "I could bring you in." She let that possibility hang in the air, studying Michael's reaction intently. He felt a flush of excitement mixed with an immediate surge of anxiety in the pit of his stomach. Joining the Outriders meant committing to their cause completely, leaving this life forever. "My family," he began uncertainly, but the Outrider didn't let him finish. "If you have any family left here, it's already too late for them. The path I'm on leads one way." It wasn't a judgment or threat, simply a statement of fact. "The choice is yours," she said, turning once again towards the building's exit. "You can return to whatever life you knew, or you can keep moving forward with me. But I won't be waiting for your answer long." With that final pronouncement, she began walking away, the heavy footfalls of her armored boots ringing against the blood-stained hallway. Michael watched her go, feeling the weight of her ultimatum pressing down with each passing second. This was it, the crossroads he had been waiting for without even realizing. He could turn back towards the remnants of the old world, steadily circling the drain as the rovers constricted their grip. Or he could take a radical step in a new direction, one that terrified him nearly as much as it exhilarated him. Without conscious thought, Michael broke into a run after the departing outrider. He quickly fell into stride beside her. "I'm with you," he stated firmly. She regarded him appraisingly for a brief moment. "Then let's move. We have a long walk ahead." As they crossed the threshold onto the crumbling street below, the first pinkish streaks of dusk were just beginning to emerge on the horizon, casting a golden glow across the ruined city. To Michael, it almost looked like a new dawn.